Hi, everyone. We are presenting on destroying the Abraham Lincoln statue.
I'm Jessica Castro.
I'm Holly German.
I'm Paul Perez.
I'm Xin Yang.
I'm Johnny Yan.
In our PowerPoint, we have overview 3 different article, conclusion, and reference. Also have questions.
In June 2020, the Lincoln Statue Monument on Capitol Hill became a public debate. The statue depicts President Abraham Lincoln holding the Emancipation Proclamation in one hand and extending the other over a kneeling, formerly enslaved person with shackles on his wrists. There is now a divide among people on whether this statue should be torn down or not due to its perceived symbolism. So now with the background of what's going on in our presentation, we took a look at 3 different news media outlets to see the different perspectives and biases on the same story. Each article we are about to present have different views and agendas. Everyone in our group took into account the biases of what each article offered, and we rated them on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most biased and 1 being the least. We examined loaded biased language, types of claims, logical fallacies, missing information, possible author bias, and possible conflicts of interest. To begin, I would like to bring focus to our first media outlet, Fox News. Fox News is usually known for reporting in favor of conservative political positions, the Republican Party, and President Donald Trump. The article we examined pertaining to the destruction of the Lincoln statue was called Representative Waltz on Lincoln Statue Being Targeted. Cancel culture has become ignorant culture. And this was written by David Montanaro. David Montanaro interviewed Republican U.S. Representative of Florida, Michael Waltz, for his input on the current situation too. So to begin the dissection of this article, let's first talk about some loaded and biased language. I went through and selected the 3 best quotes to reference. The first one I found said, Lincoln Park saw an uneasy standoff Thursday night after left-wing protesters said they planned to rally against the statue. The words uneasy standoff and left-wing protesters have a negative connotation, making them loaded and biased language. The next quote I found was, cancel culture has become ignorant culture. Again, the words cancel culture and ignorant culture both have negative connotations too, thus making them loaded and biased. The last quote I found said, the mob culture cannot decide what it wants to destroy. And like the previous quotes, the words mob culture and the word destroy also are negative. Now, let's examine the strength of the claim in this article. An example of a type of claim in this article that can be found is called the claim of fact. For instance, the article read, the Emancipation Memorial depicts Lincoln holding the Emancipation Proclamation and standing over a shackled kneeling African American. It represents the abolition of slavery in the United States. So the statement is true because that's what the statue actually represents, and that's why it was built. So technically, this doesn't make the article biased per se. It just states what the statue represents, which anyone can easily look up and confirm. Next, let's examine a logical fallacy found in this article. It read, Waltz said President Trump is right to warn of consequences for people who break the law and vandalize federal property. This is an example of the logical fallacy appeal to authority. And if you're unfamiliar to what this means, appeal to authority is a statement insisting that a claim is true simply because a valid authority or expert on the issue said it was true without any other supporting evidence offered. So in this case, it was because President Trump said so. Further looking on, to have made this article less biased, the author could have interviewed a Democrat who disagreed with their perspective to show both sides so one can come to their own conclusion on which side they want to take about the destruction of the statue. Also, I looked up David Montanaro for possible author bias. I found that he is the senior editor of Fox News. However, it was hard to find any additional information about him and his past work experiences and affiliations. With that being said, some possible conflicts of interest might be that because Fox News leans to the right, obviously their point of view will be more conservative. And also, like I said earlier, this article interviews Florida Republican Representative Michael Waltz for his opinion on the situation, which matches with Fox News' agenda and perspective. So to wrap up my summary, overall, one could say that based on our class scale of 1 to 5 bias, this article can be rated a 4 because Fox News only presented one point of view to influence their audience on the destruction of the Abraham Lincoln statue in DC.
So in the NPR article for destruction, this quote from the article, this is a frozen picture. This man is kneeling and he will never stand up. So it says the man will never stand up is indicating there's still oppression in modern time. Loaded and biased language used within the NPR article includes statements like the image being problematic because it feeds into the narrative that people need to be led in order to be free. The intentions to the statue is note that they were white-based intentions at the time when the statue was created. The statue brings a negative look of history to any groups of people who were owned by slave traders. So there's two types of fallacy claims in this NPR article. For the red herring, the position of the person who is kneeling gives the indication in the statue of the image of a slave, yet people will argue that Abraham Lincoln, who helped free slaves, and gives the illusion of the statue that what he did was correct, but he still had his slaves himself. So for the strawman position, having the statue up, since it is their culture, isn't considering the fact that it represents the oppression of one's race. Just because it's one culture doesn't mean it's morally right to be publicly shown. Possible author bias, Christina Guerra, who helped write for the LGBTQ community for years, she would like to dive in deeper into equality, culture, and social justice in her stories in her community. So in her article too, she should have more a perspective of keeping the statue up. So I give this bias scale of 3 pertaining to removing the statues because it sets a bad example of how today in society is the man still leaning today, or are we free, or are we still being free and liberated as the statue shows?
Out of the 3 articles, the Washington Post article is the least biased. It is rated a 2 out of 5 on the bias scale. It includes both sides of the argument for those in favor of taking down the statue and those opposing their removal. I found 2 quotes to reference. Oh, can we edit that part? Okay. So for loaded language, I found 2 quotes to reference. The first being, not have a mob decide they want to pull it down. Mob has a negative connotation. The second statement is, demeaning in its depiction of African Americans and suggests that they were not active contributors to the cause of their own freedom. The terms not active contributors have a negative meaning as well. Moving on to the types and strengths of claims. An example of a type of claim in the article is claim of fact. The quote being, more than 25,000 people attended the statue's dedication on April 14, 1876, the 11th anniversary of Lincoln's assassination, including President Ulysses S. Grant. Abolitionist Frederick Douglass delivered the keynote address to the crowd. The statement is a claim of fact because it is true and can be proven. For logical fallacies, there is a circular reason fallacy in the article. The quote is, even though the image is problematic, it's part of our history that African Americans themselves paid for this monument, and it is their way of saying slavery had ended. Circular reasoning evades the real conclusion by restating the problem in different words, which is being shown in the statement about slavery ending. For the missing information or perspectives, there's not much missing information. The article did a great job providing both sides of the story, those who are against tearing down the statue and those in favor. After conducting research on each author, they seem to be knowledgeable to speak on the matter, so I did not necessarily find author biased. As well, personally, I did not find any conflicts of interest for the article.
In conclusion, the most biased article is Fox News. We give it bias scale of 4. And the second biased article is NPR, and we gave it a bias score of 3. And the least biased article is the Washington Post. We gave it the bias scale of 2.
And these are the references that we used for our articles. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you guys so much for listening to our presentation.